From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. In Brazil, the death toll from the January 25 dam collapse has risen to 150. The dam collapse in Brumadinho in Minas Gerais unleashed a mudslide that destroyed many buildings and homes in the region. Nearly 200 people are still missing, and many residents of the destroyed neighborhoods and employees of Vale were from the mining company. And health problems in the area may be on the rise following this ecological disaster. Increasing cases of dengue fever, yellow fever, infectious diseases, and even suicides are expected in the long run. According to the research institute Fiocruz, Brumadinho has become an endemic area for a number of diseases. Experts are also warning of the costs these health problems will bring.
We need to learn from what happened and think about strategies that combine public and private efforts. It is unacceptable the public health sector to bear the full burden of such a tragedy, and that the company that is responsible for it collects all the profits from the exploitation.
Brazil's Minister of Justice has proposed a bill that would grant immunity to police officers for murdering suspects or criminals in cases of legitimate self-defense. Sergio Moro says he presented the bill as a way to combat corruption, organized crime, and violent crime. But experts fear this measure would increase abuse of power among police officers. And U.S. President Donald Trump has delivered his State of the Union address. The economy, border security, and foreign policy were at the top of his agenda. He said that he will build the wall on the Mexican border in the name of national security, and also said that the U.S. will never be a socialist country. U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders responded to Donald Trump's State of the Union address. Sanders refuted a number of the supposed achievements that Trump highlighted in regards to economy and migration.
The economy is not booming when half of Americans 55 years of age and older have no idea how they will live out the last years of their lives with dignity because they have no retirement savings. And that includes, unbelievably, 20% of seniors trying to survive on incomes of less than $14,000 a year. And I just don't know how anybody, certainly not a senior citizen, survives on $14,000 a year. Tonight, and over and over and over and over again, that building a wall on the Mexican border is a national emergency. In fact, he shut down the government and caused enormous pain and uncertainty for some 800,000 federal employees who are forced to go to work but were not paid, all because of his insistence on that wall.
And as Bernie Sanders said, migration was one of the main topics that Trump touched upon during his speech. And this is what he had to say about the situation in Central America.
As we speak, large organized caravans are on the march to the United States. We have just heard that Mexican cities, in order to remove the illegal immigrants from their communities, are getting trucks and buses to bring them up to our country in areas where there is little border protection.
We spoke with Abby Martin, host of the Empire Files, to get her reaction to Trump's address.
Well, it's just very disturbing and surreal. The media treats this like an award show. Who's there? What are they wearing? I mean, giving these standing ovations to Donald Trump, Melania Trump, people are applauding every sentence he gives, chanting USA like frenzied freaks. I mean, it's kind of an embarrassment that this is the state of our country, kind of an absurd, grotesque dog and pony show where you have the CEO of the empire just bragging and blatantly lying. I mean, let's face it, this is designed not to display the unity of the country or the unity of Congress. This is to display the unity of the capitalist class that are united behind the U.S. empire and essentially its bipartisan foreign policy agenda. He's talking about one nation. They don't mean one nation for us. They mean one nation for them. The 0.1%, not an America where 40% of the country's living paycheck to paycheck and don't have enough savings for an emergency. I mean, who cares about this? Trump gives speeches every day that are insane. These people should have walked out. People should have been yelling at him and heckling him because of what he has done to this country. He brags about people getting kicked off food stamps as if that's good. He discusses unemployment being low, not to mention that these jobs are horrible, a lot of them under minimum wage. He brags about kicking people off health care as Americans are rationing insulin. I mean, we're the only industrialized country without health care for all. And of course, we can't forget that he mentioned how drastically he's cut regulations and minimized the size of government in the first 2 years more than any other administration. That is abysmal. How is that good?
And Abby also spoke about the United States' role in the political situation unfolding in Venezuela.
Right. I love, this is my favorite part about it. He says, we've faced down evil empires in the past and we've defeated fascism. Really? Because I'm pretty sure the U.S. is the greatest purveyor of violence. The U.S. is the most evil empire, and the U.S. is backing an undemocratic illegal coup as we speak in Venezuela, where the fascist right could take over the country and, of course, erase the voice of 7 million Chavistas. So I found that extremely disgraceful. We know that socialism is thriving. We know that people are rejecting capitalism more than ever before. That's why Bernie Sanders is popular, far more popular than Trump, and that's why he will crush him in the general election as a self-proclaimed socialist. So, you know, he paid it to Venezuela and said, we recognize this strange man who essentially was self-appointed by a cabal within the National Assembly, a corrupt body that ceased to function. So, of course, they had to work around this, and it's just absolutely disgusting and disgraceful to see the U.S. empire time and again overthrow democratically elected leaderships, usurp the democratic processes of several countries in Latin America that then cause the migrant crisis, cause the immigration crisis, and there's just no reflection or understanding with the general American public about how these things fit together. And when you have a president that's a proto-fascist punching down at immigrants, punching down at brown people to blame them on the crisis that him and his friends have created.
And after this speech, we also spoke with researcher Vijay Prashad about the possibility of a U.S. military intervention in Venezuela.
No, I think that we have to be very, very careful about what the United States does in the short term regarding Venezuela. The United States government has attempted using the techniques of what we consider hybrid war. It has used all these techniques to conduct a regime change operation inside Venezuela. There are attempts to bribe section of the Venezuelan military to turn against the government. This is a playbook, a set of operating principles that the United States has used since 1953 in Iran and 1954 in Guatemala. These are not new techniques, but they're at play again against Venezuela. There is a serious situation. A country like Venezuela, its external revenues so deeply tied to oil prices, and with oil prices at 50% down, certainly there are economic complications for Venezuela. The United States has used this economic complexity to push for regime change. It's a very dangerous period.
Venezuela's foreign minister was among many people around the world who took to social media during the speech, using the hashtags Trump hands off Venezuela and Trump lies, both of which were trending worldwide. Jorge Arreaza tweeted that while Trump criticizes socialism, he embraces fascism. He also said that Trump can't overcome his imperial arrogance and continues to use the term illegal alien to refer to migrants. He said, from Venezuela and from all of Latin America, we reply, no one is illegal, no one is an alien. Arreaza also expressed his support of the state of Palestine and its people, who he said are fighting, resistant, and will prevail. He sent a message of support on behalf of Venezuela for the people and the government of Iran, who face sanctions and blockades, much like Venezuela. In other news, on Tuesday, President Nicolas Maduro launched the country's transport mission at Caracas metro system. The program has the goal of better connecting the country on a national level. He also announced the creation of an experimental university of transport to boost land, sea, and air transport. He also said a new public transport system will be created using Venezuelan research and innovation. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Guide your body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The UN Secretary-General expressed his support to the upcoming meeting in Uruguay to discuss the situation in Venezuela. Antonio Guterres has insisted that dialogue is the only way to find a solution to the political situation in the country. This session, hosted by the European Union and the Uruguayan government, will be held on Thursday in Montevideo. 13 EU and Latin American countries will participate. Now to Argentina, police forces were seen using repressive tactics in an attempt to disperse a demonstration taking place in the capital. Hundreds of protesters marched to the U.S. embassy and they rallied to oppose U.S. involvement in Venezuela and intervention attempts. They also showed their support to Nicolas Maduro as the country's constitutional president.
Right now, an attempt of intervention and coup d'etat is being held in Venezuela, thought out and planned from Washington. If this happens, it will set a precedent in the entire region.
They are enduring an imperialist attack. They are enduring a new attempt of a coup d'etat at the hands of the empire and at the hands of the USA. For that reason, we came here.
We are demanding the withdrawal of the North American intervention on our continent. We demand that they withdraw because we want a Latin American continent of peace and democracy.
We do not want intervention in South America, and we want through this a free Venezuela. Venezuela decides, so I demand respect the countries and their idiosyncrasies. Here we continue marching towards the U.S. Embassy with repression.
We decided to come to the U.S. Embassy to ask that Venezuela be respected and to ask them for peace. We believe that, in the world today, it is not the time to beat the drums of war, because it is very dangerous. And the best way to express it, by all the political groups and social movements present, was to have a demonstration, to say to the Yankees that they please do not get involved, that what we want is peace.
We continue in Argentina. The number of homeless people in Buenos Aires has increased as the economic situation in the country worsens.
Every day, the number of families sleeping on the streets multiplies as they have no resources to rent a house. This is just one of the most visible consequences of the economic crisis. 2 out of 10 residents in Buenos Aires are poor.
We need to analyze and take into account the political situation and the austerity measures launched by the government. They are affecting the most vulnerable people in Argentinian society.
It's a question of political will. This government wants the rich to be richer and the poor to be poor. This government wants to keep social differences. So the son of a poor worker will also be a poor worker, and the son of a rich businessman will also be a rich businessman.
The number of people living in misery went from 100,000 in 2015 to 188,000 in 2018. It is estimated that 23.6% of them became homeless in less than a year. Poverty reaches 639,000 people, 21% of the population in the richest area of the country.
The government is not sensitive at all. There have been people sleeping in front of the government buildings for some time now, but nobody cares. There are families with children, pets, with all their belongings that are homeless. You can see they're new poor because they live at the streets but have their mobile phones.
While 10% of the population lives in extreme poverty, almost 2.5 million Argentinians have no access to basic food. The social gap keeps widening. The richest get 1/3 of the income, 31.8%, while the poorest just get 1.7%.
This leads to many premature deaths, pensioners who cannot get their medicines. And the worst part is the government talking about Venezuela instead of what's going on here. The mainstream media remain silent, as they are aligned to the financial power.
The hard situation poor people face is getting more visible in the city, where the social gap keeps increasing. The number of people living in poverty has sharply increased in the last year. The figures are clear. 30.5 million people in the country are poor.
In Guatemala, there is growing concern over the pollution of the river Lempa Basin, which is leading to famine. Climate change and the contamination of the river is affecting residents in the area. They are no longer able to rely on the river for food sources. A community official says the emergency could soon reach famine levels.
We consider this an emergency. We're getting close to conditions of famine, or at least that's where we're heading. We're moving from minimum food conditions towards conditions of famine.
It didn't rain. The people who cultivated their piece of land lost their cornfields because it didn't rain and they were useless.
Around 2,000 more migrants have reached the U.S.-Mexican border. The group arrived in the Mexican city of Piedras Negras, where the Eagle Pass border point is located. Migrants were temporarily based in a shelter where medical care and tents were set up and food was provided. And dozens of people have celebrated the Lunar New Year in the streets of the Peruvian capital of Lima. The arrival of the Year of the Pig was celebrated with traditional Chinese music, performances and dances. The Lunar New Year begins on Tuesday, February 5. A large number of Chinese citizens have migrated to Peru. This happened after the Second World War. And Lima reportedly has the largest Chinese community of any Latin American city.
We are celebrating the Chinese New Year of the Pig. We are heralding in the opening of the New Year at the Tongshen Temple here. We have lions here asking the dragon for permission to start its journey, to bring good omens to all businesses, all houses and all people who want to receive us.
February 6 marks the birth of Cuban revolutionary commander Camilo Cienfuegos. He was born in Havana in 1932. He was part of the Gran Malandín, a key event in the revolution. He defeated Batista forces at the Battle of Yaguajay, and after the triumph of the revolution in 1959, became the head of the Cuban armed forces. He disappeared during a flight in 1959 and was presumed dead. We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your green zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
And we're back. In Lebanon, dozens of motorbikers took to highways on Tuesday to ride in protest against Israel's continued violation of their country's sovereignty. They rode under the slogan, "Towards Jerusalem," on millions of crossbikes. Bikers, including supporters of Hezbollah, set off in a convoy in the south of the country. They rode along the border with Israel, showing their willingness to defend their homeland against any Israeli aggression. 5 years have passed since El Tarajal, the tragedy in which Spanish civil guards killed 15 migrants on the Spanish-Moroccan border.
Today marks 5 years since the El Tarajal tragedy where 15 migrants died. Most of them are in the Ceuta cemetery. On the morning of February 6, 2014, a group of migrants bypassed the wire fence border that separates Spain from Morocco, and the civil guard used anti-riot material against the migrants. Most of them were in the water trying to swim and reach the Spanish coast. They were repressed with rubber bullets and tear gas upon their attempt to reach the shore. The situation was condemned on numerous occasions on behalf of human rights organizations. Although a court had been investigating this case, it was delayed multiple times. Families have also had a difficult time traveling to Spain to identify the victims. So far, the Spanish government has rejected visas for the families, so they are unable to come to identify the Tarajal victims.
That was Sergio Rodrigo from Madrid. And the UK government is set to resume flights deporting members of the Windrush generation to Jamaica. The government claims the individuals being deported committed serious crimes, but human rights activists and lawyers say they are victims of the country's hostile immigration policies towards certain minorities. The Windrush generation refers to the immigrants who were invited to the UK between 1948 and 1971 from Caribbean countries such as Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados. The National Assembly in France has passed what has been called an anti-hooligan bill, which many say will infringe on civil liberties. The bill will make it illegal for protesters to conceal their faces. Law enforcement will also be better able to use facial recognition technology to track down and prosecute demonstrators. This follows months of yellow vest protests. This bill will go to a Senate vote on March 12th.
This law is bad news for protests. I tried, and I'm not the only one, to stress that this is a delicate issue, a very important and subtle one. By definition, the right to demonstrate frequently affects people who are not satisfied with something. The current government is talking about deviating from standard legislative norms. Such an important decision on prohibiting freedom to demonstrate, which can sometimes be completely justified, should be taken by independent judges and not bodies which are dependent on political powers. There is a risk that the government, which I no longer trust, will restrict this right.
The 12-year legal battle between a French farmer and the agrochemical giant Monsanto has gone to its fourth round. Paul Francois is suing Monsanto for poisoning him through the inhalation of its lasso weed killer. A lower court ruled in his favor, but Monsanto unsuccessfully tried to appeal the ruling. However, the company has asked for a review of the case by the final court of appeals. The herbicide was labeled as carcinogenic by the World Health Organization.
The clay pot can win against the iron pot, and a giant like Monsanto is not above the law.
And this victory, because we never go back now on this victory, I dedicate it to all my colleagues, to all those who are sick, to all those who have died, because farmers have died from pesticides in France and elsewhere. And so it shows how much these companies, with a lot of arrogance, are able to market products that put us farmers and perhaps others in danger.
The government of the Central African Republic and 14 armed groups have signed a new peace accord seeking an end to years of fighting. The accord was agreed upon by the Central African president and representatives of militias who control most of the country. The conflict has left thousands of people dead, and a quarter of the population, which totals 4.5 million, have fled their homes. 3 of South Africa's leading banks have announced that they will no longer provide financing for new coal-fired power stations. The banks have been under pressure from civil society and environmental activists to stop funding coal power stations, which are notorious for high carbon dioxide emissions. Over 85% of South Africa's electricity is currently generated using coal. Cities across China are staging light shows in celebration of the Spring Festival. This light exhibition is located at the Lakeside Park in Foshan City in Guangdong Province. It includes advanced lighting technology and water fountains, which tell a story about the past and the culture of the district. This light show runs for another 3 weeks. With those unique celebrations, we come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, we are on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria, and we're on social media as well. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.